Do you ever just wake up with agonizing neck pain? Wolf cream.
Wow.
Wolf cream for wolf necks.
That's pretty good.
The horror genre has certainly received a massive reputation from everyone. Some love it, others aren't as into it, but many seem to even go as far as to look down upon it. Some of the criticisms noted are things such as the genre being cheap, disturbing, and overall just not as good compared to other genres like dramas, comedies, or romances. I'm here to explore that argument and share ideas on why I believe horror as a genre is actually pretty important and can match the levels as other genres can. This video is mainly for beginners of the genre who are open to exploring it, and maybe for the skeptics who are willing to dabble with it. Hopefully people who are already fans can enjoy it too. The goal for this channel is to have an open community where we can discuss things together, so without further ado, let's get started. Let's start at the beginning. Before anything else, why do humans like to tell stories in the first place? Humans are unique to craving narratives. We believe having arcs, developments, and progressions may give a bigger sense of purpose, like our lives are leading up to something grander. We've naturally created stories as a form of art, and since the beginning, they've always had the same purpose that they carry even today, and will forever. To entertain, to inform, and or to persuade. It's how our ancestors passed down the things they've learned for generations, by telling stories. It's how we went from sticks and stones to power and phones to having contact on Mars as our most recent milestone. It's what motivates us to write things down, and in a way, it's our stories that leave a part of us alive, even after we're gone. Storytelling has shaped in many forms over the time we've been here. From oral stories to books to songs, paintings to theater performances, and now to film. Film is really young. When we measure it in relativity to how long we've been at it, only a little over 100 years. We found a way to capture a moment in time that those in the future can be a witness of for as far ahead in the years as we can see. Even now, all of us are capable of doing it. From reaching into our own pockets, the memories we make, and we'll look back on. I like to think it's our form of time travel. We watch so we can laugh, cry, or get scared. It's a way of sharing something universal. How even through language barriers, with people from other side of the world, we can relate to someone thousands of miles away. We all have a lot more in common than we think. That's what stories are. Connection. It was the autumn of 2000. My parents took me to my local library, and there they were having a sale. Books, movies, audio tapes, the works. And something caught my eye. A black case with an orange figure on it. Knives shaped to look like a pumpkin. A VHS copy of Halloween. My dad bought it for me and we took it home. I inserted the tape and I saw Halloween for the first time. The autumn of 2003. It's when I fell in love with film. It's funny, I didn't know that I was in love, it just happened. Something about the film made it immediately stand out from the others I've watched. Even as a kid, I understood that. Something about this small, cute movie that mostly took place in just two houses across from each other felt so grand. There's many things we can say about the film, but essentially this was the beginning for me in diving into horror. And I searched and searched, and what I found was there was a lot of everything in it. There are horror movies where you can laugh, horror where you can root for the romance, horror where you can relate to the devastation that may be inevitable in everyone's life. That's when I realized horror is much more than just being scared. It's about connection. We all have fears and anxieties, and it helps us in a way where we can relate to one another. Shared trauma, as they say. And what is a horror without a little lightheartedness, as adding a bit of light can make the shadows bigger. Let's take a look back. Since the dawn of horror movies, they've all had a lingerance of the same common variable. Reflection. For every decade, there seems to be a theme, a hidden subtext, which I believe is the reflection of our issues at the time, the fears that grew on us as a collective. For example, the classic universal monsters can be seen as a representation of minority groups. Dracula is a low-key gay icon, as his characteristics are flamboyant in nature. And what are vampires but a metaphor of being seduced to temptation? There was even studio interference as producers refused to allow any scenes to be screened that showcased Dracula biting a male's neck. They knew what they were doing. Frankenstein's monster can be argued as an exaggerated metaphor for intellectual disability, as he is nothing but a playful kid stuck in a grown man's body. Let's fast forward a few years into the future. The 40s and 50s. We're fresh out of World War II, and we're dealing with the aftermath of it. The damage control and the anxiety of nuclear fallout is still fresh in our minds. The eerie idea of deformities we share, the idea of becoming mutants after nuclear war, and then came giant creature features. Giant ants, giant lizards, giant people. In the American 70s and 80s, it was quite common to allow kids to go out without supervision. As long as you came back before dinner, before sunset, you were free to do whatever you wanted. People like to think it was safer back in the day, but that's before we had phones and the internet where we could share any information in seconds. That's why serial killings and kidnappings were so much more common back then. And then came slashers. The common fear of a lone stalker following you, waiting outside your own home, is a universal fear to this day. What about modern day? What was the new theme of the past 10 years during the 2010s? I'd say it's a mix of both a fear of technology and mental health. Serial killings may seem as though they faded away, but I believe it's just evolved to something else. Mass shootings. Gone are the days where there weren't any cameras around. They're everywhere. We carry them in our own pockets. Killers can't go on sprees over the course of several days anymore. They instead explode and use all their energy up in one day, knowing they'll be caught. Mental health is a big name nowadays, as fortunately we've done a better job in making it less taboo. We're treating it a lot more seriously, and I believe we're only going to get better at studying it and finding new ways to treat the several different types there are. Both Ari Aster films, Hereditary and Midsommar, are about loss and losing oneself. Hereditary, being a play on its title, shows us a saddened and slow burn of how our own family struggles can unfortunately be passed on to us and future generations. As for Midsommar, I like to quote Avatar Aang, "When we were at our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change, for good or for bad." With Lee Whannell's latest film, The Invisible Man, we dip our toes deeper into sci-fi horror, as it challenges us in ideas of how far humans can go in inventing devices that are almost beyond our own comprehension. I mean, have you ever thought about how touchscreens work? It wasn't just made in a day, but over the course of years, with multiple inventors adding on to the concepts and ideas over time. But the end product? It's insane. But the story of The Invisible Man is also about a toxic relationship and learning how to overcome our own demons with mental health, how to overcome abuse and gaslighting. So to go back to the topic of evolution of horror, where do we go now? Where will we take ourselves? Maybe the effects of climate change? Maybe Mother Nature will be the next phase of horror? Maybe we go deeper in the concept of AI taking over. Well, let's remember where we were not too long ago. Humans going to the moon was a thing of fiction. Humans communicating from devices that can fit in the palm of our own hand was mad scientist talk. But look where we are now. So what's the latest rave in what we think the distant future will look like? Something cyberpunk-esque. I like to think maybe it's humans traveling the stars, far beyond our own galaxy. It's naturally within our deepest desires to explore the unknown, and that is what has been both humanity's biggest fear, yet biggest venture. The common variable within every single fear there is in existence, the unknown. So what is horror to us? What is fear? Well, it's a form of connection. It bonds us together to survive as a group, and never alone. It's human nature. It's an excuse for us to progress and evolve. There's really no way of knowing where the future will take us, but I like to remain optimistic. What will the decade of the 2020s have in store for us? Well, it's been pretty hard for everyone so far, that's for sure. But maybe we're overdue for some good soon. So where do we leave off with horror? There's plenty of things to talk about. A lot of my favorite soundtracks are from horror, as well as many visual aesthetics. Another reason why I'm bringing up Halloween is because of the concept of Michael Myers as the boogeyman himself. In any culture, any religion, any science, any person, there's the concept of the unknown. The The entity that, or lack thereof, that hits us right in our primal fear. The fear of the monster in your closet or under your bed. That's the boogeyman. The terrifying disfigured entity that was sitting on your chest when you had sleep paralysis. That's the boogeyman. The fear of learning about the horrors of the world as you get older. That's the boogeyman. The fear of getting older and not knowing how to cope from being lost. That's the boogeyman. Every monster we've ever seen, every adventure we've gone through, from all the movies and stories we've told, they're all shades and variations of the same boogeyman that lives inside all of us. But that's okay. Without the boogeyman, we wouldn't be afraid of loss. We wouldn't fight for what we stood for, right? Overcoming the fear of not knowing oneself is possibly one of the hardest things one can go through, and it takes a lifetime. But luckily, I think we found a way on how we can always overcome it. No matter what the circumstance, there's a little trick humans have come up with to combat the horrors of the world. The answer is simply, well, you guys can take it from here. As a fan of horror, I can also critique the genre and its subgenres' flaws, such as the racism and sexism scattered throughout its history, along with the reusing of tropes and cliches in many of the films, but not all. Well, that's the challenge for us in this channel. We'll find ways to explore a bit deeper and see why we both love and hate horror, and how it impacts us today. You guys ready for this? It'll be an adventure.